Welcome to episode 5 of CRM Tuesdays. I am here with Omi Diaz Cooper from Diaz Cooper, HubSpot implementation experts, among other things. I am Wendy Lieber from Content Bacon. We help fuel your CRM with amazing content. Welcome, Omi.
Thank you for having me. I'm super excited to be here today. I'm very excited about today's topic. It's something that's close to my heart, so can't wait to share some tips.
Yeah, so we're taking a different approach to this one. We're usually a bit more prepared, but we wanted to dig into event marketing, trade shows. I know you just got back from inbound, and trade shows can be such an important business development tool for companies, and your CRM can truly be like having another team supporting that if used correctly. But most companies aren't doing that, or they're doing it on the fly, they're doing it very reactively. So, we want to talk today about how to make your event marketing really successful, more planned out, and get the results by implementing the CRM strategy as part of it. So, just as important as who's going to the trade show, who's manning the booth, what the booth looks like, the CRM should get equal billing on the kind of conversations you're having when planning your event marketing or trade shows. So, I mean, why don't open it up to why are you so passionate about this topic? What are some of the things you see that happen or don't happen when companies are doing event marketing and not necessarily getting the bang for their buck because they're not implementing the CRM as part of the strategy?
Yeah, so I see this all the time. Particularly, there's a lot of industries like manufacturing, aviation, a few others that really are entrenched in trade shows. Trade shows are a huge and necessary part of their go-to-market strategy. However, they're also very expensive part of their go-to-market strategy. And a lot of times they can't really justify the ROI of their investment. So a lot of these companies are spending $300,000 a
Yeah.
year or more in between the sponsorship costs, the cost of the booth, the collateral. They have gorgeous booths. They have, salesmen, ready. They've paid for travel in most cases. But then they come home and the salespeople have, a bunch of business cards in their pocket, and marketing has an attendee list. And manual input of the business cards, manual follow throughs, right, at best, if they're not forgotten, and marketing just sending out generic, oh, it was great to see you at XYZ show, blasts that really drive almost nothing. So to me, that lack of being able to properly identify and nurture the leads and the contacts that are made in the shows, and be able to do so in a meaningful way is a huge part of how money is being leaked out from these trade shows. And then the fact that whoever's investing in them is not really seeing a hard ROI. They have a lot of anecdotal, but it's not really showing in their CRM.
Yeah, what comes up for me around trade shows and well, we'll just stick to the word trade shows. People are going to trade shows because they want to do business. It's a
Hmm.
captive audience on both sides. If you're an exhibitor, clearly you're exhibiting because you want to do business. If you're an attendee, you're there because you want to meet, new vendors or connect with your current vendors, but you're there for opportunities. So it's such a great opportunity because of that. So I think that's kind of part one is you're dealing with a captive audience that wants to be marketed to, sold to, right?
Hmm.
So I think, I think about it in really three key pieces. There's the pre-marketing you do, there's the, while you're at the show, what you're doing, and then there's the follow-up. And all three are extremely important. And your CRM can be such a great tool to keep track of all of this because it can be a lot of information. I mean, I've gone to plenty of trade shows. Well, while I'm there, I'm like, this is the best thing ever. I'm going to totally change my business. And then, you get back and life takes over and that momentum fades. So setting yourself up for success before you even, leave to go to the trade show, I think is so key. So let's maybe break it down into those three components. What's the pre-marketing and how can you use your CRM to support you before you even, attend the show?
Yeah. So the first thing that I will say is that it's really important to create a specific campaign for the trade show, right? You don't want to just start doing things and have all the pieces be disjointed. So you want to make sure that everything that you do is connected to a specific campaign within your CRM. One of the things we like to do is to set up a landing page where people can, this can be promoted through social media, through emails, whatever, but the landing page itself will have the ability for you to pre-book time with the sales team that's going to be attending the show. So that way, at least the sales team has some pre-booked meetings while they're at the show to make their time the most effective. Because the truth is, a lot of these shows are very busy,
Yeah.
and sometimes you catch people, if they don't happen to walk by at a time that you're not already with somebody else, you might miss that opportunity. So trying to get as many pre-bookings as possible is really important. I'd like to ask you, what are you seeing in terms of content and types of outreach for letting people know? I've seen really lame ones where they just send out maybe a couple of social media posts. Oh, we're going to be at such and such show. Come see us at booth XYZ, and that's it. What
Yeah.
more can somebody do?
Yeah, I think you nailed it when you said have a campaign. So maybe it's you're going to do demos, in the booth at certain times. Maybe you're going to create some more exclusive gatherings while you're at the show where, salespeople can invite either, high target prospects or high value customers, and you create something that's just a little bit more unique and personal. Maybe there is a new product launch and you want to let people know, like, hey, if you want to be the first to see this, book time, come by the booth. So I think it's thinking through all of those things so that you're not just going out with another run of the mill message that's, hey, come see us at booth, 182. So it's thinking through what's going to be exciting for your current customers if they're going to be there, and how are you going to use the trade show to deepen those relationships, maybe, add additional revenue to those relationships, get referrals, and what are you going to do to attract new prospects? And I think really, coming up with some ideas and then nailing on one or two and using that in your marketing messages will help you stand out. And again, that's what people want. That's why people are going to these trade shows. They want to be in the know. And so if you can provide them something that they can only get there, that's going to level them up, that's going to give you the ammunition to get them to book time, come by your booth,
That's
and want.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so let's talk about during the show. I'm going to tell you that I was shocked at how many companies, again, just take new contacts that they meet, new leads that they meet, and they might even be companies that their own company has already worked with, but it's like a new person, a new decision maker, a new procurement officer, for example, and they really just have the conversation there, shove the business card in their pocket, and then it takes a long time for them to even think to get back to that person. So one of the things that we really strongly push is that as part of that campaign that you are using, especially if you use HubSpot, that you're using your mobile phone and the HubSpot app to scan that contact's email and information into the CRM. If you build the workflow correctly on the back end, that contact will be assigned to you as a lead, and you can even trigger a personalized outreach, from that, if you have the right tier of contact, and again, if you've built this correctly, or at the very least, you can at least write yourself, like once you scan them in, write yourself a little note in your CRM as to what you discussed and what you talked about, because then that becomes part of the enriched timeline information on that contact, and it'll make it a lot easier, a lot less painful to get back to them with a meaningful email and not just a generic, hey, I met you at such and such, let's talk, right? No,
Yeah.
it's I met you at such and such and we discussed, this and that. How can I be helpful in, with this challenge or this issue for you?
Yeah, I think all that is spot on. I think pre-planning and having the conversations before you go to the show on all of these things so that you have a system, everyone's comfortable with doing it. It becomes part of a daily checklist. Maybe, before you leave the booth every night, everyone spends 30 minutes, just kind of doing all that before they head out for dinners and things like that. I mean, it takes discipline, but it will pay off. And then I'm a big proponent for having all of those workflows and sequences ready to go. Maybe they need to be customized a bit so each salesperson can put their touch, but giving them some of the templates that they can easily just go in and do that, I think goes a long way. And I'm even a proponent for while you're at the trade show, if you just had a meeting with them, you know, have that first follow-up go out right then. Like, how impressive is that when things are fresh versus
Mm-hmm.
waiting till you get back and then that person's busy and getting a ton of emails, like doing things more in real time, but with authenticity, with real value, citing the thing that you talked about. Again, this is where technology can make things easier because you can do voice notes, you can do the things,
Mm-hmm.
but there's still effort in actually executing. And I do think if you can, carve out, 30 minutes, an hour every day while you're at the show to do some of this follow up, you're going to come back, to the proverbial office, like with like things in your inbox ready to go versus having to do all the outreach then. So I think the time during the show is so critical because that's where those relationships are being built. That's where you actually looked someone in the eye. So when you follow that up, that relationships just deepens. And that should be the goal is how can we create more meaningful connections? And that's how you do that.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I also think that the more personal you make that contact and the quicker, like you said, the better. Because everybody just gets inundated after the show, 2, 3 days after the show, everybody's inbox is going to be inundated with every other exhibitors, who also purchased the attendee list and are sending
Right.
the same, like lame email out. So talk to me a little bit about what tips would you give someone to differentiate themselves after the show, right? From a content perspective, or what can make them stand out?
Yeah, I think the first thing is again the pre-planning because you're not going to have the same time and enthusiasm once you get back from the show. When you're preparing for a trade show, all possibilities exist, right? You're excited, there's goals that you want to meet. Think through what are the type of messages, what are the type of conversations, because you kind of already know, right? You pretty much know your buyer persona, you know what you're going to be dealing with. So get those things specked out, like what's going to be interesting to this person. And what's going to be interesting is always going to lead back to what's in it for them, what's going to solve their problems, what's going to get them more revenue. And like build out those scenarios beforehand. And you might have 4 or 5 different buyer personas that you want to build out. But this is where, marketing and sales can work together and really come up with some great stuff. Get those built out so that way when you get back, you're able to, the sales team is able to click on a particular workflow that makes sense, that's segmented. Again, if they want to go in and do a little bit of customization, great, all the better. But it's ready to go and it's going to provide that information, provide that, hey, here's the new product. Hey, whether it's maybe a discount that you're giving, all, trade show attendees that reply within, 10 days. There's all kinds of things you can come up with, but the key is the execution and the consistency. And it's not just the one follow up email, right? Because everyone does come back and inundated So you want to build out that workflow, that sequence over the course of the next 2 or 3 weeks. And marketing should be looking at data, and sales should be looking at data, and it should be a combined effort because it's not just the email, it's also the LinkedIn message, maybe it's the text message, picking up the phone. People still do that. It's
Mm-hmm.
all of those things that will then lead ultimately to, the goal that you're trying to get to, which I guess in most cases is, you want to create a sale, or you want to create someone booking a demo, or whatever the sales process is. But I think it's all in the pre-planning. I think when you're trying to do it after, you're just on your back foot.
Absolutely. I want to add one thing that I'm seeing currently that is really super effective, and that is video emails, where the salesperson themselves is being videoed saying, hey Joe, it was great to meet you. We discussed X, Y, and Z, and we are confident we can help you with that. Why don't we go ahead and book a demo, or whatever CTA. I think the power of that is that you're reminding them of who they met. You're reminding them of the humanity. Instead of sending just a generic
Yeah.
email, you're sending a very personalized email that's coming from one human to another. And then you're also reminding them of who you were, because people remember faces for the most part more than anything else. They may not remember the person's exact name or the company or whatever. So when you see that face, it does tend to, for most people, to trigger that memory. And HubSpot makes it really easy to be able to execute this on a large scale. And you can also use AI to record one video and then automate, sending others out that still have your face but are customized. It changes the contact name and maybe some of the context in it. It can be very, very powerful.
Yeah, I love that idea. And I think that's a great tool to have in the toolbox as, one or, two of the touch points. I do think using multiple touch points is,
Yes.
also very valuable because again, people, if they see you're engaged with them in different ways and not just looking to get, but also commenting on your post if you're active on social media, reaching out to you different ways, all of those things support building a relationship. And at the end of the day, people do business with people they know, like, and trust, right? So, you've got to kind of think through how are you using content and tools to move people along that life cycle because, again, people do like, using I mean, I enjoy getting text and emails and using that as a way to build a relationship. I also like getting on the phone sometimes, but depending on what's going on in my world, I might not have the flexibility one week to get on a phone call, but I can still stay engaged with you, get some information using email or text and keep that relationship alive. So that's why I think it's so important to use multiple touch points. And it's also important to learn what your audience likes because you may have certain people in your segment, in your list that only like phone calls. I mean, there is still a segment that's like, don't email me, don't bother me. If you want something, give me a call. So learning the behaviors of your target audience is so important. And again, this idea that there's a one size fits all approach or that you can use AI to like mimic, so much of human behaviors is a farce and it won't work because people respond to things in different ways. And if you don't take that into consideration, I don't think you'll have the same success as if you do take that into consideration. And all that takes work. It's not,
Hmm.
something that you can just push a button and be like, respond to all my prospects in the exact way they want to. Maybe AI will get there at some point, but I think still people enjoy when they understand how you work and I have certain, vendors trying to get my business that know my behavior. They know like later in the day, I'm usually way more accessible than I am, throughout the day. So if they email me 5 or 6 o'clock at night, they're likely to get a response because that's usually when I have a little bit more focus and presence. So just knowing things like that, I think is really important.
Yeah. And the other part of the challenge with after the trade show is how do you manage and measure all of these different touch points. So we're talking about emails, we're talking about text, we're talking about social media, pages, forms, demo requests, calls to action. How do we know that these things are working? And so, of course, it's very important, like I said, to make sure that you're building this out into a campaign. The new Marketing Studio feature in HubSpot makes this so much easier to do than ever before. But if you really want an easy button, you should really have a very structured way to do this that you can replicate over and over again. And that's why we built a package called Trade Grow. And that brings all of this, it brings a little bit of that easy button into
Yeah.
this, because it brings in the components of the pre-show, the scheduling, the pages, the automatic responses. It brings in the nurturing, being able to respond to emails once, or respond to contacts immediately during the show, and then more meaningful post-show nurture, and all wrapped into dashboards that let you see influenced revenue, contacts created, deals created that were influenced by the trade show. So you can compare different trade shows against each other, how they perform, as well as the trade show over time. So maybe you do something different, the next year
Huh.
that you go, you can compare one to another. So really, it's obviously something that a really good admin can build out. But if somebody just wants something that's easy and replicable, using a tool like TradeGrow would be huge in making that difference of having so many pieces and spending so much time
Yeah.
versus having a much more easy button and built right for HubSpot toolkit to be able to get it done.
I think that's great. How far in advance do you recommend a company contact you, to get themselves set up for success for their next trade show?
Yeah, so TradeGrow is easily installed in a couple hours, and what used to take days and weeks, it is all built out very quickly. Obviously, like you said, the actual content of what each piece
Hmm.
it requires some thought, some pre-planning, industry trends, whatever makes sense. But I really recommend that people start. Promoting their presence at a trade show sooner than they have been. I've
Yeah.
seen, like I said before, I've seen like major companies sending out two social media posts like the week before the trade
Yeah.
show. I really think they need to start sending it out 3, 4 weeks in advance minimum, so that you can start funneling people to that landing page and getting commitments, for the different salespeople, using their meeting link so that they
Yeah.
can get their appointments set up way before the trade show starts. And this
Yeah.
is really, aligning those marketing efforts with those sales efforts is really the key to making this a success.
Yeah. And I think, it's all well and good. Like everyone hearing this will probably agree with everything we're talking about, but few will actually be able to implement it because, you know, we're all busy, doing the things and preparing for a trade show is a pretty heavy lift. And so
Hmm.
unless you bring in additional outside resources, I think outsourcing this is just smart business. I think it's going to be the best use of your dollars versus trying to think you can do it in house. One of my favorite sayings, and we adopted, is what gets outsourced gets done. When you think you can do it all in house, which you can, but we don't. So why keep doing the same thing over and over again and getting the same or similar results? Like, why not take your trade show impact to a whole new level? And I think utilizing your services is such a great way to do that. Well, you'll actually see more data and really get a sense of what's going on, what's working, so that you can truly make trade shows, a big part of your revenue generation versus just this thing we do as a company, but we're not sure it works. We think it works, but we're not really sure. Like, make a case for why, it works or it doesn't, so that you can, take it to the next level.
Yeah, and likewise from a content perspective, really being able to have the time to research industry trends, or you know, hot topics and things like that, where again, Can the in-house team do it? Yeah, but do they have time to? More,
Right.
9 times out of 10, they don't. So being able to use, a service like Content Bacon where, that research and that messaging is really honed in on, I think it could, would be a very valuable addition to the trade show sequence or go-to-market motion, right?
Yeah, 100%. All right. Well, let's bring this home into a close. I've loved this topic. I think again, it's so valuable, and there's so much, I think gold and utilizing your CRM with your trade show strategy to generate results. So I hope our listeners will take this on, and I hope, they'll take a look at the trade grow package, because I think it's a brilliant, brilliant thing to enlist an expert like you to really just set these things up for success versus try to do it yourself. So we'll make sure we include links and more information. And yeah, it was a great topic as always. And I'll look forward to what we come up with for episode 6.
Yeah, looking forward to it, and thank you.